And thank you for joining me here. I'm Don Ma. Wall Street seesawed on Friday and closed slightly lower after a turbulent week during which benchmark Treasury yields hit a 16-year high. And this is as investors digested the Federal Reserve's hawkish outlook revisions. All three major U.S. stock indexes oscillated for much of the session and posted weekly losses. And on Thursday, the S&P 500 actually dipped below its 100-day moving average. This is a key support level. And its failure to move back up above that level suggests the index is still under downward pressure. And thousands of migrants have crossed into the United States in recent days, marking a turning point after numbers have plummeted in recent months. Here are the details.
Record numbers of migrants in the thousands have crossed into the United States in recent days, with many more still arriving by bus and cargo trains to Mexican border towns. The surge could represent a looming political challenge for Biden heading into the election season. Enrique Lucero is Tijuana's Director of Migrant Affairs.
The big problem we see is that it could become a humanitarian crisis. Irregular border crossings are being encouraged, generating organized crime and human trafficking. These are the risks we see if decisions are not taken promptly.
Experts say the U.S. lacks the capacity to detain and process migrants at the border, often making it impossible for the administration to carry out the harsh penalties it announced in May. And as a result, some asylum seekers who cross illegally are being released into the U.S. with a future court date, rather than being deported. Their success stories are repeated back to migrants still en route. This Venezuelan migrant, still on the Mexican side of the border, says he heard rumors about people being let into the U.S. after turning themselves into border agents. He's determined to continue on his journey. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection, meanwhile, has told Reuters that it was, quote, safely and efficiently processing migrants and would impose consequences, including deportation, on migrants without a legal basis to stay in the country.
And migrants arriving at the U.S. Mexico border is what officials are calling the next big wave. This new surge of migrant crossings is once again putting a strain on border towns such as El Paso, Texas. Here's more.
Growing lines of migrants cross between official border checkpoints waiting to turn themselves into U.S. border authorities in El Paso.
Fuerte.
It's hard, this mother says, carrying a toddler she struggles to feed. This man holds a sign begging for work to buy a bus ticket. Please support me to complete my ticket. There's a growing number of migrants crossing into the United States, raising concerns this could be the early stages of a renewed surge of illegal immigration. In recent days, a crush of people flooded into Mexico's southern border and continued north. Large migrant groups have been spotted on trains heading to the U.S. southern border. In El Paso, city officials say they've helped more than 4,000 migrants in the last week.
As they come in, they're processing at that table.
John Martin runs a network of local shelters and says they're already over capacity.
Just a few days ago, we were up at 170 here at this location for a facility that comfortably should be no more than 120.
Daily encounters in El Paso are about 1,200 per day. Most migrant shelters are full, some migrants are sleeping outside, but the city is using hotels like this one to handle the overflow. The crisis is not limited to El Paso.
We've transported hundreds of people to the airport.
A surge in San Diego has volunteers dealing with thousands of migrants. Many, like this 24-year-old from Ecuador, are on their way to family already inside the country. He says he wants what every person comes here to do, to work and live here, breathe new air. But in El Paso, this migrant surge doesn't rival those during Title 42. At least not yet.
The only thing that I can affirmatively say, we're starting to see the larger number of peoples, and I think it should be heeded as a warning.
And you might have to add Amazon Prime to the list of streaming services inserting ads into its programming. Starting next year, Prime will include limited advertisements in movies and shows. Amazon's change brings it in line with its rivals like Netflix and Max, and adding ad-supported tiers as companies search for additional revenue. Amazon explained that the commercials will help it, quote, continue investing in compelling content and keep increasing that investment over a long period of time. Customers that want to skip the spots can buy an ad-free tier for an additional $2.99 per month next year. Prime Video is included in the $139 yearly Prime subscription. And McDonald's sued over its hot coffee again. An 85-year-old woman spilled the coffee onto herself, saying it caused her physical pain and emotional distress. NTD's Dave Martin talks with her lawyer.
McDonald's has been sued again over a hot coffee spill.
My client, she went to a McDonald's here, located here in San Francisco, specifically the one on Fillmore Street. She decided to get a cup of coffee. The lid was not properly put on. As she was about to drink the cup of coffee, it spilled all over her stomach area, groin and leg area, and she received some burns.
Attorney Dylan Hackett represents plaintiff Mabel Childress, a woman in her 80s. Murray says that when Childress reported the incident to McDonald's employees, they ignored her.
She spoke to, I believe, 3 different employees, and one actually started laughing at her. And at that point, she left and decided to treat her injuries that day.
The case is very similar to a famous 1994 case in which 79-year-old Stella Liebeck successfully sued McDonald's after she too spilled its hot coffee onto herself. At one point, she was awarded $2.7 million, though she ultimately settled for an undisclosed amount. Liebeck's injuries back then were far more severe.
Third-degree burns. She had to have surgery. She had to have skin grafts.
Murray says that even though Childress's injuries are less severe, she might be awarded more money.
California is a more friendly jurisdiction for plaintiffs because they respect the rights of those that have been injured, more so than probably was the case in New Mexico. Another thing is 30 years has passed, and so the cost of medical expenses and damages has gone up.
Meanwhile, Childress is currently recovering and in good spirits. This is Dave Martin for NTD News.
An Elon Musk company is offering people with quadriplegia a chance to use a brain implant to move. His startup Neuralink says it's recruiting for its first human trial. It's working on a precise robotically implanted brain-computer interface called PRIME for short. Participants will have a chip placed in their brains that sends signals to an app. The goal is to control a computer cursor or keyboard with their thoughts. A trade group for U.S. authors has sued OpenAI in Manhattan federal court on behalf of prominent writers. It's accusing the company of unlawfully training its popular artificial intelligence-based chatbot, ChatGPT, on their work. Here's the report.
John Grisham could be going to court for real. The legal thriller writer is among major US authors unhappy with ChatGPT creator OpenAI. A trade group that represents the likes of Grisham this week filed to sue the firm. The Authors Guild also represents big names like Game of Thrones novelist George R.R. Martin and freedom writer Jonathan Franzen. The suit accuses OpenAI of unlawfully training its artificial intelligence-based chatbot on their work. It joins several others from writers, visual artists and source code owners against generative AI providers. Similar lawsuits are pending against Meta Platforms and Stability AI over the data used to train their AI systems. OpenAI and other defendants have said their use of training data scraped from the internet qualifies as fair use under US copyright law. A spokesperson for the company said on Wednesday that it respects authors' rights. But the Authors Guild said writers must have the ability to control if and how their works are used by generative AI. They said they needed this to, quote, preserve our literature. The new lawsuit is concerned with datasets used to train OpenAI's large language model to respond to human prompts. They allege it included text from the author's works that may have been taken from illegal online pirate book repositories. The complaint said ChatGPT generated accurate summaries of the author's books when prompted, which they believe indicated their text is included in its database. It also cited growing concerns that authors could be replaced by systems like ChatGPT that make what they called low-quality ebooks, impersonating authors and displacing human-authored books.
And are you hitting the road this autumn? Might have to look a little different than in past years. While airfares have dropped as usual, there are major concerns hanging over this fall travel season. Here's more.
Fall is here, and with it usually comes ideal travel conditions. Flights and gas are typically cheaper and airports less crowded.
September and October marks a time when most students go back to school. Folks head back to regular work schedules after a more flexible summer.
This year, however, could look very different. Gas prices reached record highs this week, and the national average remains above $3.85, according to AAA. The good news, according to an expert from the travel app Hopper, autumn airfares are 9% less expensive than last year and 10% cheaper than in 2019.
This is in part due to higher capacity on the airline side and the opening of international demand this summer.
But that higher capacity could hit a snag. Contract negotiations continue with flight attendants at 4 major airlines as they inch closer to potential strikes. The looming government shutdown could also cause major travel headaches. TSA officers would have to work without pay, threatening delays across the country. It would also halt training on new air traffic controllers at a time when they're already struggling with staff shortages.
A government shutdown would stop us in our tracks. It would stop training at just the moment when we're finally trending positive again.
AI and cloud computing could potentially create billions of dollars in productivity gains for small and medium businesses. This is according to a report by Amazon Web Services and technology services firm Accenture. And I'm joined by here Derek Georgino, NTD contributor and risk consultant from the greater LA area. So Derek, I want to ask you, how is AI and robotics transforming the healthcare industry? Maybe we can start off with small businesses and mid-sized businesses.
Yeah, sure, Don. Well, Accenture and Amazon Web Services or AWS just issued a stunning report which said AI and cloud-enabled technology is going to unlock around $80 billion in productivity for small and mid-sized businesses, broadly speaking, by 2030. So not too far away from that, specifically in health industries, education, and the agriculture industry sectors. This is a big deal, Don, because really micro, small, and mid-sized companies comprise 99% of global firms and generate over half of the GDP in developed countries. And I think the main takeaway from that report and other reports that have been issued on this topic is that while it may seem counterintuitive, it is actually smaller and mid-sized businesses that are ripe for adopting technological advancements to achieve savings and higher efficiency, particularly when it comes to AI technologies and cloud technologies. The question might be why? Why small and mid-sized businesses? Well, it's because they're usually the disruptors in their respective industry spaces. And really small and mid-sized companies are usually the innovators who end up either being acquired by a big enterprise or they end up becoming the big players themselves. Not to mention in a small business, Don, there's fewer cooks in the kitchen to argue about adopting different ways of work and different technologies.
And can you give us some examples as to what kind of technologies are cropping up here?
Yeah, well, this is actually an interesting subject because AI technology in particular, and especially cloud technology, has been widely democratized. It's become more and more available to small and mid-sized businesses who might have less cash in the bank than your Walmarts and Amazons of the world, right? So think about something as simple as ChatGPT. To my knowledge, it's free as of now. I think there's a version where you can pay a small subscription fee, but that functionality at its base is free. And so you can gather a lot of information by using that tool. Optical character recognition, technology that can read physical documents and extract key data from them for interpretation downstream, is a relatively low-cost form of artificial intelligence, and some base licenses there can be as cheap as a few $1,000s for some small businesses. There's automated workflow and visualization software that can digest and visualize data for business leaders to make prudent decisions. But 40% of these small and mid-sized businesses are at least at a basic level of adoption when it comes to cloud technology. And a recent survey found that 26% which is relatively high. Over a fourth of small businesses say they've begun using AI-enabled technologies. So those are just a few examples, but it has become widely democratized. It has become lower cost, and that's why small and mid-sized businesses have been able to break out into this scene a little more, adopt the technology quicker than a large bureaucratic organization would. And hence why I think this report forecasts $80 billion in productivity in the next 7 years.
Yeah, and maybe you can explain to us what are some practical applications of these technologies that would be beneficial to the patient, I guess?
Well, serving as a risk consultant primarily in health industries, I can shed some light as it relates to that industry specifically. AI and cloud-enabled technologies have busted onto the scene for a while now in the healthcare space, and not just from a back office administrative sense, Don, but also from a clinical space. The National Institutes of Health in 2020 reported that the use of AI could potentially cut United States healthcare costs by $150 billion by the year 2026. Telehealth and telemedicine, which many of your viewers might be familiar with and experience on a day-to-day, as a huge product of artificial intelligence and cloud-enabled technologies. By 2030, there's going to be over 20 million annual telehealth consultations in the United States conducted by small and mid-sized healthcare organizations. In the clinical patient care space, AI has begun to transform the way that we diagnose, treat, and remotely monitor patients. It can be used to analyze tons of clinical documentation, which is quite interesting, and even identify disease markers quickly and more accurately for patients. This results in more personalized, customized, direct-to-patient care when these healthcare organizations are beginning to leverage this technology, and it does save costs as well.
And I find it interesting that you mentioned that you have some personal exposure in this field as a risk consultant. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that, some interesting things that you've seen.
Well, when it comes to cloud-enabled technology, we're seeing more and more health systems adopt that because it's more scalable. You don't have to incur as much cost for IT infrastructure on premise. You can compute a lot of your financial data and even patient data in the cloud. It's generally more secure than on-premise computing systems. So from a cloud standpoint, we're seeing that a lot in the healthcare provider space. From an artificial intelligence space, it's really cutting edge. Like I said, in the clinical patient care space, it's being used to analyze clinical documentation faster, more accurately, and is enabling healthcare providers to provide more personalized care for patients. And even on the healthcare payer or insurance side of things, Don, AI is being widely used to facilitate data analysis when it comes to claims that have been submitted to a payer. Whether you deny them, whether you negotiate those claims, et cetera. There's certain data elements that could be analyzed from that sense as well. So it's also helping insurance payers crawl through their thousands or millions of claims that they receive in a year as well. So just a few examples there of what we're seeing in a healthcare industry space, and that's going to continue to grow. There are cutting edge discoveries, believe me, that are happening in the patient care space that you wouldn't even imagine when it comes to AI.
Well, if AI can do all these things, would that put at risk people's jobs? Would AI replace some of those people's positions?
I think inevitably, Don, a good subset of the American or global workforce is going to be displaced by the use of artificial intelligence and even cloud computing. Being somewhat of a free market capitalist myself, I don't necessarily find myself in the bucket of restricting that growth in efforts to save jobs, but I also don't find myself in the bucket of letting AI run amok and uncontrolled, because to be honest, when it comes to AI, computer algorithms, the cloud, it's garbage in, garbage out. Ultimately, they're developed by mankind, and mankind is not infallible, as we know. And so AI and the outputs that it generates and the business insights that it might generate for a business need to be kept in check. That's why, in the audit and consulting space that I live in, we never tell our clients to put all of their eggs in the AI basket. We tell them to verify and corroborate the veracity of what these tools are providing you when you make decisions for your business. You can never just solely rely on a machine to provide you everything you need and to make prudent business decisions. And so while to an extent it can displace part of the workforce, I also think it can create new jobs. But I also think that a lot of these jobs that some people might think disappear are actually still going to be needed in order to, quote, keep AI in check, if that makes sense, and to actually ensure that it's generating correct information for the business.
Well, if history has shown anything, is that if something can be done, that it will be done. So when it comes to AI, I mean, is something potentially negative bound to happen? Is it only a matter of time? Let's say data privacy, for example.
Sure, but I think, it depends on the platform that you're using when you're leveraging AI tools to process information. Like I said, a lot of this is done on the cloud, and generally speaking, this isn't a blanket statement, but generally speaking, the cloud is more secure than on-premise computing systems. So if you are churning data to the use of AI tools on your cloud infrastructure, it might be more secure than your legacy systems that you had been using. That said, like I said, right, to quote Ronald Reagan, right, trust but verify. So when you use these tools and you're relying on these tools to make decisions, again, you need to kind of draw on your own business knowledge, your own knowledge in the industry space. Don't remove the human element entirely from your use of these technologies, because if you do, like you said, all it takes is one breakdown and you could be making significantly wrong decisions for the course of your business. So like I said, do not place full reliance on this stuff if you're a business leader, and don't drop all of your eggs in the AI basket. Human judgment is still very much so needed. And while these technologies are advancing and you have machine learning and these things are learning from their own experience and getting better and better and better at generating insights, I don't think in the near future these technologies are going to be infallible. I think you still need mankind there to keep them in check.
I think the ultimate question here, and maybe this is just the last question I'll ask you today, is will AI, develop to become sentient, right? Will humans be put out of the loop? This is more of a philosophical question, perhaps, but do you think, like Skynet, for example, are we going to get to that point?
I don't know, Don, truthfully, right? It's a philosophical question, but maybe also more of a scientific one that extends beyond my expertise. But I do think if you get to a point that's close to that, you're going to start to lose the human element that's needed to discover new information. I mean, even think about the way we learn about our prior human history in ancient Egypt and so forth. I can't envision a near future or even a long-term future where AI is able to, discover more about our ancestors without boots on the ground actually digging through that stuff and figuring it out and discovering it, right? So I think the element of human discovery about our history, about new ways of work, I just don't know how quickly that can be driven into obsolescence by computer algorithms. But again, philosophical question, but also perhaps a scientific question that extends beyond my mental capacity here.
Well, always good to hear your insight. Thank you so much today.
Thank you, Don. Likewise. Always love being on the show.